I have a story to tell you about ancient people discovering dinosaurs and how they thought they found actual dragons. This is part of our series where we talk about dragons throughout history and around the world. So let's do this. For thousands of years, Chinese farmers were finding large, fossilized bones in riverbeds and cliffs. They collected these bones and ground them into a powder to use in traditional medicine. They called them longu, which translates to dragon bones. Most of these dragon bones were actually fossilized dinosaur remains. Some were identified as sauropods and others as ceratopsians. But at the time, the people who discovered them had no idea that they were holding dinosaur bones. Instead, they believed that they were the remains of dragons. One day, a man named Wang Xinshi found a particularly large collection of fossils. He brought them to the imperial court where they were examined and declared to be genuine dragon bones. Eventually, some of these fossils made it into the collection of Emperor Nero. In the 19th century, some of these long bones were finally identified as a new species of dinosaur. It was named Mamenchisaurus after the legendary chimera from Chinese mythology. Mamenchisaurus was a long-necked dinosaur that lived in what is now Sichuan and Chongqing in China. During the late Jurassic period, its fossils are so common in the area that many locals still believe it to be a real dragon. Dragons in Chinese mythology were often described as serpentine, but with animal-like features. This aligns well with the fossilized vertebrae and skull fragments that were discovered and used in traditional Chinese medicine. Occasionally, a tooth would be found with a crown, root and neck perfectly preserved in amber. These were said to be the most potent, and a single tooth could be ground into a powder and used for an entire year. Another dragon bone discovery happened in Central Asia. The ancient Scythians and Greeks traveling across the Gobi Desert saw fossilized skeletons of Protoceratops. These skeletons had beaked faces and long tails, which led them to believe that they were the mythical griffins. Griffins were usually depicted as lion eagles, but the ancient Greeks also had stories of bird horn demons, which may have been inspired by Protoceratops skulls. If you didn't know what a dinosaur was, a skull with a beak and horns would look like a bird-lion hybrid. The historian Adrian Mayer believes that this was the origin of the griffin myth. Other fossils found in the area include those of Maiasaura, a relative of Ankylosaurus, and the fearsome Tarbosaurus, a relative of Tyrannosaurus rex. Both animals would have been terrifying to see roaming around the desert, and both have been featured in our previous videos. Moving west, we come to Europe and the medieval period. During the Middle Ages, large fossil bones were dug up from quarries, and most of the time, they were interpreted as dragons or giant humans. One famous example is the 1500 discovery of a mastodon skull in Sicily. It was initially thought to be the skull of a cyclops. Later, when the island was under Spanish rule, it became known as the Devil's Cup. In England, dinosaur femurs were found in the 1675, labeled dragon bones and stored in church relic collections. There are also reports of a three-headed dragon skeleton in the British Museum. It was probably a collection of dinosaur ribs and vertebrae, but perhaps the heads were carved from stone. Unfortunately, there are no surviving records of it, so we don't know for sure. Most European dragon legends probably emerged from the discovery of fossilized dinosaurs or Ice Age megafauna, like mammoths. While studying dragon bones, monks may have even read stories about dragons from the East and woven them into their own folklore. Finally, we reach North America. In the Great Plains, various tribes found large fossilized bones and teeth, including those of Triceratops and T. Rex. These were attributed to thunderbirds or giant water serpents. The Lakota people tell a story of 7 clans who lived in the Black Hills. 6 of the clans were wiped out by a great flood sent by the gods. Only the clan of the Teton, or Thunder Beings, survived. The Thunder Beings lived among the clouds, riding giant birds with wings made of rock. Every summer, they would return to Earth and leave claw and tooth-shaped stones behind. These are said to be the only remaining evidence of the Great Flood and the thunder beings themselves. These beliefs were similar to the Native American thunderbird, a gigantic bird-like monster that snatched up unwary travelers, and sometimes battled with the equally enormous sea monster, the champ. Fossilized remains of prehistoric creatures fit perfectly into their oral histories of great beasts slain by sky spirits long before Western paleontology arrived. Now, why did all these ancient people think they were finding real dragons? Well, the answer is simple. Fossils lack context. People had no concept of extinct species until the 17th and 18th centuries. When someone finds a bone or tooth, the first thought is always, how big was the animal? The second is always, what did it look like? So of course, it seemed logical to assume that these bones belonged to giant reptiles or mammals. Anything else would have been too fantastical to consider. Now, you might be wondering why dragons specifically. Well, it helps that dragons are already serpentine in appearance. Long-necked sauropods like Diplodocus were probably interpreted as river dragons. The larger, more fearsome sauropods like Titanosaurus were probably interpreted as mountain dragons. Small protoceratopsids with short, stubby snouts can easily be seen as little baby dragons, and the larger, more robust protoceratopsids with longer, more pronounced horns were probably seen as griffins or European horned dragons. Lastly, the flying reptiles called pterosaurs were probably interpreted as wyverns or thunderbirds. The takeaway: many dragon myths are likely rooted in real fossil discoveries that were interpreted through a cultural lens of giants and monsters. Even today, traditional Chinese pharmacies still use ground dragon bones, which are often fossilized vertebrae or teeth. And that, my friends, concludes our series on dragons. We started in China and worked our way west, exploring the myths and legends of each culture along the way. It's been a wild ride, but I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.